So I'm recording this on Tuesday, and I literally just got off of work yesterday, and I think I might be getting sick. Um, just because last week I had to replace my windshield wiper blade, and I was in the cold a lot, and I've just been having really bad postnasal drip, and I've been clearing my throat so much that my chest is getting kind of sore. So I figure before I wake up with really bad laryngitis from all the throat clearing, I should probably record this episode and get it out of the way. So if I do lose my voice, at least I won't have to worry about recording. So apologies if I sound a little but yeah, that's kind of what's going on. I'm gonna probably go get checked out tomorrow at immediate care or at a doctor, and just see if it's just like a little cold or if it's COVID or whatever. But I should be fine because I don't feel sick and I don't have a fever. It's just the postnasal drip and a little bit of stuffiness in my sinuses, so I should be fine. But anyway, with that out of the way, welcome to this week's episode of Divergence and Divine. My name is WIllspiration, and today we're going to talk a little bit about healing, and I just kind of want to talk a little more about Reiki as well. So we're going to start off with talking about healing, and healing can mean a lot of different things. Healing could be anything from physically healing from an injury or, healing from some emotional trauma or mental trauma, which when something's traumatic, you never really fully heal from it. It's always in the back of your mind, but the healing process is learning how to coexist with it, where it's kind of like, not like, how should I say this? Because it's very similar to like the whole concept of autism, where it's like, it's a part of you, but it's not all of you, if that makes sense. Like, it's always going to be there, but it's never like a truly like, it's not your soul defining factor, even though in those moments when it flares up, it feels like it is. So it's just kind of learning how to live with, with all of that. And therapy is a great way to do that, but I know not everyone can always afford therapy. I always say if you can and your insurance covers that and you have insurance, definitely, therapy is definitely the way to go, I think. And if not, you can always search online how to keep yourself grounded and in the moment, and how to, find ways to deal with that kind of stuff, even when you don't have the ability to see a therapist. And also, again, apologies. I'm probably going to be clearing my throat a lot while I'm talking because I can feel it in my throat, like the postnasal drip. So apologies. But the thing I feel about healing is that sometimes when you go through something, there are times where even if you can't afford therapy, life will send you some tests to see how your healing process is going. And sometimes those tests may actually just be a way to get a light bulb to go off in your head that'll kind of aid in the healing process. And last week I talked about a situation about how I found an old photo from high school about me and my friend, and how somebody at work, kind of reminding me of my friend, and I kind of realized, wow, I've healed a lot from that, and I never really fully healed from that after everything that had happened in high school between me and my friend. In fact, I didn't even start healing until I started going to therapy, honestly. But there was also another instance too where I actually have a friend that I work with, and she just reminded me a lot of this woman from a previous job that, did me really dirty and was like, accusing me of not respecting boundaries, even though she never, openly stated boundaries and expects everyone to know her boundaries. And there's just a lot of similarities from like the way they do their eye makeup to their skin color to their, hair color and skin tone and like the way they dress and everything. And it's like, I remember being so afraid to talk to this lady, and she was in my onboarding group, and I was so scared. And then she actually started talking to me, and then, we kind of talked here and there, and then eventually we just kind of we became friends, and I feel like we're pretty good friends. I always tell her she can vent to me anytime she wants, and I always help her, through things if she ever, vents to me about stuff. And we think very similarly. So it really does help when you have somebody that has like similar thinking patterns to you, because then you know that that person actually understands you. So they kind of have some good insight on how they, operate and how they deal with things that might actually help you. So it's always really nice to be able to actually help somebody out, and it always makes me happy when I get to help people. But it's just, healing is very scary and it's very hard, especially when you have to reopen old wounds, so to speak, when you're talking about, mental and emotional. And it's never fun. And there's nothing wrong with crying because, especially if something's traumatic, tears are normal. I mean, it's something that you never forget as long as you live. And and it's hard, right? It's hard. It never feels okay. And it's still painful every time you think about it. But like the idea of healing from that is to, like I said earlier, is like learning how to coexist alongside that. And grounding techniques are a very good way to do that, whether that's meditating. I know one technique for like me as an autistic person that I use when I'm feeling overwhelmed is what I do is I have a little card and I run through my 5 senses, and that usually kind of helps keep me from having a meltdown when I feel overwhelmed. And that's always a good thing to do too, because it doesn't just work for autistic people. It also just kind of works in general when you need to be grounded and you feel like you're going to have a panic attack, or you're going to have like a full-blown shutdown, or again, if you're on the spectrum like me, you feel like you're going to have a meltdown. It's always a good way to like kind of run through your senses, because as you're running through your senses, you're learning to be in the moment. So like you're thinking, okay, well, you always enlist like 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear. Or no, it's 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and then 1 thing that you can taste, which typically is your saliva. But the point is that you run through your senses and you kind of realize, oh, wow, that distracted me for a second. So now when that thought comes back, it doesn't feel as overwhelming and you can actually kind of talk through it more. And another thing that I feel really helps with healing is, honestly, a lot of people are always like, well, don't vent to people because people don't want to hear your problems. And, to be fair, that's true. A lot of people typically don't, but there are the words. There are also people out there that do genuinely like will listen and do care. And, for me, I like being that person with, the people that I know, whether they're acquaintances, coworkers, friends. I always like being that person that like offers insight, or is just, even if I can't offer any advice because I've never been in that situation, at least being like a shoulder to lean on and an ear, and like offering an ear, for someone so that they feel heard is like, it is very, I feel very honored to be that person, because it's like, I think back to when I was in high school and I didn't really have that. And I think about how people always, treated me, and I just go, wow, here I am, like being that supportive person that I never had and that I wish I had. And I'm like a completely different person than I was when I was in high school. And honestly, I never thought that I would ever get to this point where I could be that person that people rely on and can confide in. And it makes me so happy. And I feel so grateful when, people always tell me that it means a lot to them when I hear them out. And even if I give them advice, I always like to tell people that they, it's up to them whether they want to try it or not. Because for me, I care about people. I care about my friends, and at the end of the day, I can give them advice, but it's ultimately up to them whether they choose to take it. But I always like to just encourage people to just trust their instincts and trust their intuition. Just because even if that decision doesn't play out the way that I thought it would, at least something else comes out of it, whether it be a life lesson or maybe going through that door that wasn't exactly what they thought it was leads them to a different door that actually opens up a possibility that is a lot better. And that's, I feel like, is a huge part of life, is always like expecting the unexpected, but knowing that even though this is your plan, things can go awry. But even if things go wrong, it's kind of like you end up getting somewhere else that can be more beneficial, or it brings you to a person that might be able to help you more, or or maybe it'll bring you to abundance and you might, land a better job, or, things might finally start to settle down and, things start to work themselves out. But yeah, it's kind of like sometimes things go good, sometimes things will go bad. And sometimes, there's sometimes where things happen that are good, but they also come with some, drawbacks, right? So not everything can be perfect, but sometimes you gotta take a little pain before you get to the reward, I guess, is a good way of saying it. And sometimes it's not fun, but it'll bring you to better places sometimes. So I feel like a lot of people are just kind of afraid to go through that. And I feel like when you start trusting your own judgment, knowing full well that this is my plan and at any point something can come in and just, ruin the flow of everything, that it's still, you just know that something better is going to come out of it, whether it is that decision or whether that decision leads you to a new path that'll, bring you to that point. And I think that's the biggest takeaway about healing, is that healing hurts. It's the same thing, like, for example, I cut my knuckle on a soup can lid like about almost a month ago, and I probably needed stitches. And you can see the scar, even though the skin healed, you can still see the scarring underneath the skin. And, should I have probably gotten stitches? Probably. Am I lucky that it didn't get infected and that it healed just fine? Absolutely. But it still kind of hurts when I touch my knuckle, right? Because, I'm pretty sure I cut a tendon a little bit, and that's why it hurts. And that's probably going to hurt for at least a little bit longer, since it's most likely going to end up with scar tissue. So it might hurt the rest of my life. But, at the same time, at least I learned, hey, for 32 and not being that physically active, at least my body can still heal at a decent rate. So that's good to know. But it just kind of taught me that next time I cut myself that deep and I'm bleeding like that, I should probably go to immediate care or, an ER and be like, yeah, I cut myself. It's still bleeding, not as bad, but I might need stitches. And you know what? That was a lesson learned. But the healing process for that was not as much physically painful as it was annoyingly painful. But I learned my lesson out of that. So, healing from, mental and emotional stuff is the same way. It's just, I think you just got to figure out how you want to go about, healing. And for me, before I even went to therapy, like, I was always looking up, like, how to deal with anxiety, how to, deal with bad memories and things like that. And I would always just Google things and just kind of see what I could find on Google. And, sometimes I would watch YouTube videos. Like, there's this YouTube channel called Psych to Go, where it's like, it breaks down a bunch of different, like, psychology topics and gives like little tips, like, how to handle this situation if this happens, or, how to ground yourself when you're feeling anxious, or, topics like that. And I think that is a very helpful tool for people that can't afford therapy, because it makes it so that at least until you can afford therapy, that you have a way to, at least be able to ground yourself. So there's tools out there. So even if you can't afford therapy, you can find some tools and, like, at least try to heal and not let things get to you as badly. But ultimately, I say if you can afford therapy, therapy will be the best thing for you. My only complaint with therapy is that you got to find the right kind of therapist, because I know people that do therapy love to help others, but sometimes some therapists are not cut out to be therapists. I remember I had my first therapist, and my first therapist was basically telling me that she was just there to let me vent and that I had to figure out my own way of dealing with things. And then my second therapist was always trying to tell me that I was wrong about things and that there were the way that I was thinking was not right. And then I had a third therapist she was better. A little more understanding about me being neurodivergent, but, she was still kind of eh. And then finally, my fourth therapist, which is the one I'm seeing now, is actually autistic. And therapy is way better because she's an autistic person. And, like, I'm not saying that neurotypical therapists are terrible, but from a neurodivergent standpoint, it's easier to talk to another neurodivergent person because we're more understanding, we're more logical. So when you are neurodivergent, to have a neurodivergent therapist that's neurodivergent themselves makes it a lot easier to communicate because they're more patient, they're more understanding, and then you both can work together to figure out something that works for you, especially if you're a very introspective person and you kind of have an idea of what's wrong. But again, it all just comes down to just figuring out how you want to go about healing. And that is honestly my take on it. And the last thing that I want to mention too is that one thing to be aware of with not therapy, but like with healing, especially if you've been through something traumatic, especially if it's left you with PTSD, is that whoever caused that pain and that harm to you, whoever has put you through that point where anything can just trigger flashbacks and make you, go into a full-blown panic attack, just know that 99% of the time, those people are not sorry and they will never be sorry. And that's kind of the hardest part about healing is the people that hurt you that aren't sorry will never give you closure. And you have to kind of learn to accept that you're never going to get that closure. And that even if that person did tell you sorry, that 99% of the time, they don't mean it. So you have to learn that their apology was fake and that they truly intended every single ounce of harm that they did to you. And I honestly feel like, at least in my opinion, that like once you get over that mountain that is learning to accept the fact that you will never get closure, it makes the healing process a lot easier, because from there, then you just kind of go down the mountain, so once you climb the steep part, you can literally just slide down the mountain, right? It's basically like gravity does the work, right? You go down a mountain, you go down a lot faster because it's steeper, but now you're going down instead of climbing up, so it's less effort. So that's kind of where I feel like that is once you get over you're never going to get closure and that person is not sorry phase, it makes healing a lot easier because now you're not waiting for that person to say they're sorry so you can start healing. Now you work on healing everything that you can heal from yourself, and you just learn to accept that little part of you that can't heal because you're never going to get closure will always be a part of you and may even still trigger some flashbacks, but at least they won't be as often. And then you can live your life more fully. And I feel like that is just kind of a great tool for everyone to have, is to just be able to, if you have PTSD, be able to have a reliable way to heal and have a way to ground yourself when you feel those panic attacks coming on, and be able to learn that your life is not like truly revolved around the trauma anymore. It's like you can actually live your life and not have the trauma get in the way anymore. And again, you're still going to have it. It's still going to be there and you're still going to have to push through it, but it becomes a lot more manageable and, it doesn't consume and, ruin your life anymore. And, I just want to say this, and I just want to preference this, that I'm not trying to like put anybody down that might have PTSD. Like, this is solely me coming from my heart, trying to do my best to find ways to help people, especially if they do have PTSD or if they do just have a lot of emotional and mental bad memories and feelings and stuff from things that happen, whether they cause PTSD or not. So, everybody's feelings are valid and everybody has the right to feel the way they feel. But I just want to try to help people be able to not like feel like that all the time. You know what I mean? Because I know for me, there were a couple times where I almost had, I don't have PTSD. At least I don't think. I mean, I could be wrong, but, there were times where I did feel like, old memories would come back and I would just break down crying because it was just the memories were too painful. And I just feel like I've done a lot of work and a lot of healing, and it's just now I can think of those painful memories and not feel like it's consuming me and not see parallels everywhere anymore. So I just want everyone to be able to, heal to the point where it doesn't affect them and take over their lives anymore, because I want people to be happy and I want people to be able to, live their lives and not feel like they're being held down by their past like I was. So I'm always an ally for, supporting anybody that's been through a lot. And I never try to make anyone feel lesser than or try to make them feel like what they're going through is invalid. So I just want to put that out there before people think that my advice is like condescending or rude or anything like that. So I just want to put that out there. But I'll probably cover that a little more in detail next week, assuming that I still have a voice. Just because usually when I get this kind of sick, usually I get laryngitis so bad that it takes about 2 weeks for my voice to come back. So fingers crossed that I still have a voice next week. So that way I can at least record next week's episode. So yeah, I might try to go a little more detail into healing, and if not, probably in a couple episodes from now, I want to gather up some like healing things that'll be good for healing, and maybe some grounding techniques. I almost said healing techniques. Well, I mean, I guess grounding techniques are a form of healing technique because it's like it helps ground you in that moment, so you can kind of helps you stay calm. So I guess it's like kind of like a healing technique, but like a mental healing technique, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. But that just brings me to Reiki. So as you guys know, I stated it in the beginning of last week's episode about how I am a master Reiki teacher in Yasui Reiki. But I was talking to some people at work and they had absolutely no idea what Reiki was. And then my friend suggested that, I find a way to, get the word out and let people know what Reiki is. And I thought, that is a good idea. So initially I was going to spend this whole episode talking about healing, but I also want to, talk about Reiki for a little bit. And then I'll probably just make another video about Reiki after this while I still have a voice, but we'll see. But Reiki is also a good way for healing, at least spiritually, just because there's also that spiritual aspect of things that happen that you can can affect you on a soul level, and Reiki is good for that. And Reiki is actually good for a lot of things. Like I'm actually going to pull this up because I'm going to pull this up on my phone because I had Chat GPT summarize this for me because I wanted to see how it could summarize this. So I don't know. I've been having a lot of fun playing with Chat GPT. Let's see. So over here, I got Yasui Reiki Rihoyo, which is the Reiki that I do, that I'm a master teacher in, is a traditional Japanese technique for stress reduction and relaxation that also promotes healing. It was developed by Mikao Yasui in the early 20th century. The practice of Reiki involves a practitioner placing their hands lightly on or just above a person to help facilitate the person's own healing response. The idea is that an unseen life force energy flows through us and is what causes us to be alive. If one's life force energy is low, then we are more likely to get sick or feel stressed, and if it's high, we are more capable of being happy and healthy. Reiki is often described as a holistic therapy that supports physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being. Wow, I can't read today apparently, but the whole point is that it does help facilitate healing, and the whole idea is that everybody has a sort of life force energy, um, or spiritual energy, so to speak. If anyone's ever heard the concept of auras, like how people have an aura color, like that's part of, I guess I wouldn't say that's part of Reiki, but it definitely helps with Reiki if you can see auras. I know that there's, in terms of scientifically, if you can see color around people, that's like really bad, I guess. Like that means you have like some sort of like eye disease or something. But I personally think that we all have some sort of divine abilities, and people can knock me for that all they want, because science refuses to study anything that's not tangible. If you can't physically see it or physically prove that it exists, then obviously it's a hoax and a load of baloney. But you have to remember that in the past, a lot of things were spiritual based, and that spiritualism is kind of what led to the beginning of science in the first place. But tangent over, going back, but it is believed that Reiki can help heal you in many different ways, from emotional to mental to spiritual and even physical. My Reiki teacher, the one that certified me in all my levels of Reiki, told me one time she sliced her hand open, and she drove herself to the ER so she could go get stitches because she knew that she needed stitches. And I can't remember. No, I think she ended up needing stitches, but when she was driving to the ER so she could have it looked at, she Reiki'd her hand, and when the nurse had gotten her in to look at her hand, the wound had pretty much stopped bleeding, and it was pretty much like the whole skin kind of like, or like the tissue around where the cut was had already kind of started growing back quickly. And they were pretty surprised, both the nurse and the doctor. But then the doctor told her that they were going to have to cut it open again just to ensure that they could clean it out so it didn't get infected. So when you practice Reiki and you take good care of yourself and you build up that connection with divine, it actually can help you heal on a physical level by, as ChatGPT's description said, by increasing your life force energy. And when you're in a higher life force energy, it helps facilitate growth. Man, I cannot speak or read today. I'm having a really off day. Such fun being neurodivergent. But yes, it does facilitate healing on all four fronts of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And again, since it's not quote unquote scientifically provable, a lot of people will just kind of let it go in one ear and out the other, rather than accepting the fact that it is very entirely possible that there are things that science will never be able to explain that you just know is right. And you're going to have the naysayers that are just like, well, if science can't prove it, it's not real. But, I mean, we also don't have a lot of technology to prove that there are things that we can't see that are real. I mean, think about how many things that we know now thanks to science because of the advancement in technology that back then, like in the Middle Ages and even in like the colonial ages, people would think was a bunch of witchcraft and just a bunch of hoopla that we now know is scientifically proven. So that's why you can never really rule anything out, because we just may not have the technology to prove that auras are real and that, divine energy is real, because we don't have that kind of technology yet. So you can't really just dismiss it when even 200-300 years ago, we didn't have the technology to prove that a lot of things that we know today are real. So that's also why I also encourage people to have an open mind about things. And for me, I feel like it's pretty good, because like when I had gotten my level 2 certification, I was taking it alongside a practitioner that worked at that shop with my Reiki teacher. And I had seen, not my Reiki teacher, but the other practitioner for spiritual mentoring, because she was ADHD and autistic like me. But the only reason why she wasn't there was because she had gotten into a car accident the day before, and she had, if I remember correctly, she had a grade 2 concussion from the accident. So when I did my next spiritual mentoring with her, I just used half that time to practice my Reiki, and I was able to heal her. Well, not heal, not like, when I say heal, I mean like temporarily heal her concussion symptoms. And she was like really like just kind of shocked, because it was like all of a sudden the light wasn't hurting her eyes anymore. Her head wasn't throbbing in pain constantly. It just kind of felt like she just had like a little headache, because sometimes people get headaches, and sometimes you get a headache when you're sick, like that kind of headache, like headache, like a very, very mild headache that's like annoying, but it's not like really like discomforting. It's just kind of like, yeah, I just wish it'd go away kind of headache. But it just kind of goes to show that Reiki has that potential to, as kind of like a temporary pain relief, like taking Tylenol or Advil for some, discomfort, and it temporarily takes it away until the medication wears off. Like that's kind of what Reiki is like, but on a spiritual level without needing to take something. So I think that that's just very, very interesting. And the more, obviously, the higher in levels you jump up, the more powerful your Reiki becomes, that you can actually not full on heal something, but you can definitely speed up the healing process in that specific area for the time being while you're practicing on it and, doing Reiki on that specific spot. Now, obviously, if something is like a permanent injury, obviously, like you can't heal that, but you can at least be able to temporarily, you can just use it as like a pain reliever for somebody that has like chronic pain from a permanent injury. So it's actually pretty cool. And that's why I think it's like Reiki is such an amazing concept. So I encourage people to kind of just look into Reiki more. Depending on if you can afford to, because Reiki practitioners charge all different kinds of prices. It depends on your area. Because a lot of people, obviously people use it as a business, so, they need to be able to make a profit, so they might be expensive. Me personally, once I get everything squared away to be able to do my own like little Reiki business on the side when I'm off of work, like for me, I just think, not just given the area that I live in, but just to make it easier for me as an autistic person and someone that has like dyslexia and dyscalculia, charging $1 per minute actually would work better. But for me, I kind of just like, my struggle is I don't want to charge too much, but I also kind of like need the extra money, so I don't want to just charge it for free, because cost of living sucks, and especially in the state that I live in, cost of living is terrible. Like I only have enough money with what I make to barely afford my apartment, and like probably put $100 in saving away a month. It's pretty bad. So I need like a second income. So like I would have to charge, a fair price for Reiki that's still competitive, but is a little more adaptable to the cost of living, which I know some Reiki practitioners out here near me charge a little above the average income, so to speak. But yeah, that's just something to be aware of. Every practitioner is different. There might be some that might give you like a free 10-15 minute mini Reiki session to see if you like it or not. Some will probably just charge you full price, so you'll have to like try it once and see if you like it. And if not, then yeah, it kind of feels like a waste of money, but at least you gave it a try. So really you just kind of look into that. But with that, I'm going to end this episode because it's been almost 40 minutes. And I need to save what little bit of my voice I have left to make another video explaining Reiki a little more in detail. So I will leave you guys with this. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this week's episode, drop a like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, because the notification bell will let you know when I upload a new episode of the podcast every week. And with that, I hope you guys all have a good week, good weekend. And I hope that things are going good for you and that you have plenty of happiness, health, and abundance. And I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.